Hey, Elissa Walker Campbell, welcome back to the Big East Sports Show. And you bet, the postseason has finally arrived in college football. We're going to take a deep dive and break down the 12-team college football playoffs. And thrilled to have with us the senior writer at The Sporting News, and that is Bill Bender. Hello, Bill.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me on.
Hey, it's good to have you on. And the 2024 regular season and the conference championship games wrapped up last weekend. And we found out which teams made the first ever 12-team college football playoff. So my first question to you is, did the College Football Playoff Committee, the 13-person committee, did they get it right?
Yeah. I mean, in the format we're doing, they did. I think a lot of the questions about SMU and Alabama came up, but they rewarded SMU for the regular season, for going undefeated in conference play in their first year in the ACC. And I think Alabama was penalized for 3 losses, and that's how this should be. Would Alabama beat SMU on a neutral site or a home site? Probably. But that's not what this format is doing. Otherwise, had they put Alabama in over SMU, I think we would spend this entire segment talking about it. The whole week would be Alabama-SMU talk, and we're really not doing that. So that tells me that they did make the right decision.
Well, Bill, let's talk some hypotheticals. If SMU had lost to Clemson by, say, 3 touchdowns and not by merely 3 points, would they still be in the playoff, or would they have gone with Alabama?
I think they would have gone with Alabama at that point. And I was kind of going back and forth that night, thinking, okay, if this gets to 41-10, and it's pretty clear that, Clemson's a 31-point victory. Clemson had lost to Georgia. Clemson had lost to South Carolina, and the SEC would have a very strong case at this point. I just couldn't come off the Oklahoma-Alabama game. Alabama lost that game 24-3. It wasn't how they lost. They looked disorganized, discombobulated, whatever word you want to use. They looked bad. And I think that stood out to me. You can talk about scheduling other teams out of other conferences, but you got to take care of the games in your conference. And, every team has 2 losses or less. That shows that the regular season does matter.
Yeah. Bill, do you pay attention to the actual seedings? I mean, do they matter? We think Penn State is 6 seed and Ohio State an 8, yet the Buckeyes beat Penn State. So how does this all compute for you?
Right. Well, real quick, I guess there is one 3-loss team, Clemson, but they did win the conference championship. Seeding 5 through 8 was the hard part for me all year, because the committee valued that extra data point, and they did not penalize Texas and Penn State for playing in an extra game. I probably would have had Ohio State over Penn State. I probably would have had it Texas 5, Notre Dame 6, Ohio State 7, Penn State 8. I think my biggest problem with the playoff in general is it's just not seeded properly to begin with. And we can have automatic berths, but if you seed this thing out 1 through 12 the proper way and just go by the rankings, how they have them, your 8-9 game is Indiana-Boise State. That sounds like a more realistic 8-9 game to me than Ohio State-Tennessee. But that's just me. Maybe there's a little bias creeping in because I'm here in Central Ohio. But yeah. I just think Ohio State beat Indiana. Ohio State beat Penn State, and that has to matter.
Senior writer at Sporting News, Bill Bender, with us. And for the first time, more teams will have an opportunity and a shot at a national title in the second week of December. So in your mind, Bill, who has a clear path to the title game?
I'm pausing because I'm trying to think if anybody actually has the clear one. Everybody has a question. I think that's what it makes it so great. Is Oregon has a tough path. Oregon's best team. Oregon went 13-0, but I think, playing Ohio State or Tennessee in the quarterfinals, that's not easy. Georgia has a huge quarterback question without Carson Beck if he's unable to play. Texas has that question of, okay, your strength of schedule isn't all that great. And, I think Ohio State and Notre Dame are the 2 teams out of the first round that could actually win the whole thing. So that's what excites me, is that we have, I would say, half of the field could win the national title. I didn't always feel like that about the 4-team field. Half the time I was like, well, that team's going to win it. So, especially like last year with Michigan, I was like, Michigan's going to win it all. That's what makes this exciting. You can make a case for Penn State and Tennessee. If I had to pick one team, I'd pick Oregon. I love their offensive defensive lines. I think they've managed to avoid the chaos. I'm a little leery of an Ohio State rematch, though. Those 2 teams played a really great game on October 12th.
What about the Vols? They've got some very stout defense. Give me an argument on why perhaps this could be their year.
Well, argument against would be they have to come up here to Ohio in a week and there's snow on the ground. And we've been waiting for this. Big Ten fans have been waiting this their whole life. Hey, come up here and play in December 21st when it's supposed to be cold next week. Argument for, though, is this. They have a punishing running game around Dylan Sampson. They have an outstanding defense around James Pierce. They're built to come up here and win. And I think they're built to make a run as long as Nico Iamaleava, and if you look at the 12 quarterbacks in this playoff, he's probably got the highest recruiting pedigree, 5-star kid. I have to double check that, but I'm pretty sure he'd be up near the top. If he plays well, they could go on a run. And I think that's what makes this game so interesting in Columbus next week is Ohio State to me is very boom or bust. We're still hungover up here, not me personally, but some Ohio State fans are, about the Michigan loss. How do they come out and play after that shocking Michigan loss? Everybody's waiting to see how.
Which team, though, as we step back and look at all the teams competing in the college football playoff, who is the hottest team right now in the country?
Arizona State. I didn't have to pause on that one. They were awesome. They played as well as anybody the last 6 games. They were beating teams by 18 points per game. Cam Scadaboo was amazing. Sam Levitt, when he was healthy, really good. And Kenny Dillingham, they're kind of taking a cue from their coach. They've been very aggressive. Not many people are going to give them a chance coming out of the Big 12, but they can score points. And we'll see how that translates in their second-round game. If they played Texas, for example, it'd be a fun game to watch. I'm all in on that. So the Sun Devils were as hot as anybody coming into this thing.
Well, we want you to weigh in on the big matchup when we talk about the Hoosiers and Notre Dame. Countdown to kickoff December 20th. You know it's going to be an electric atmosphere. What are you looking forward to the most?
Oh, I mean, I'm a Catholic school kid. I went 12 years of Catholic school. I'm not like a huge Notre Dame fan. Most of my buddies are. And, I mean, what better way to start the playoff than have it at Notre Dame, you know? And they were really good. They're also up there for hottest team in the country. If you would have told me on September 7th, hey, you just lost to Northern Illinois, but you're going to be 11-1 and one of the playoff favorites, I don't think any Notre Dame fan would have believed you if you said that. Great in-state game, too. Indiana will see what they've learned from Kurt Signetti from that Ohio State game. They didn't play well there. I think what to watch for, can they run the ball? They couldn't run the ball against Michigan and Ohio State. The stats show that. It was really miserable. I think 2.3 yards per carry. If they can't run the ball against Notre Dame, it'll be a long night.
Getting ready for Indiana, Notre Dame. Let's talk some SEC. What are your expectations for Texas? Will they bounce back? Because they seem to be a little bit deflated exiting the field after that loss to Georgia.
Those were the only two, games where Quinn Ewers had a completion percentage of less than 60%. And he's been under the microscope all year because, and due in large part due to the quarterback playing behind him, Arch Manning. Everybody wants to see Arch Manning play, but I think this is Quinn Ewers' team. I love their defense. They have a difference maker on every level, front, linebacker, defensive back. And I think that'll add up. I mean, they had these 2 losses to Georgia. If they just would have won that game against Georgia, I would say that is the team I definitely think will win the national championship. I still think they can. I think the talent's there, and the path is reasonable. But can they beat Oregon? Can they beat a team that's really good on the offensive and defensive line? And that'll be the big question. They'll get Kelvin Banks back, too, the Lombardi Award winner. That will help.
Who you got advancing to the Final Four and ultimately winning this thing on January 20th?
Okay, so I did it Sunday. We do that. Everybody does these articles right at the buzzer. Hey, give me your winner. I put Oregon. I put Penn State, and that's wild. Penn State has that path where they're going to beat SMU. They got to beat Boise State. I think they will. They've only lost 1 game as a favorite the last 3 years. I put Georgia just by, it's almost like a Pavlov's dog type thing, like you're conditioned to pick Georgia, maybe a bulldog in this case. And I think they'll get to the Final Four, and that leaves, who do I have left? Texas. So, then you get into the championship game. I think it'll be Oregon and Georgia. I need to see the quarterbacks for Georgia. I will say this. The 2 games that will determine the bracket that I think happen in the second round are an Oregon-Ohio State rematch and a Texas-Notre Dame game. Because I think the winners of those 2 games will play in the national title game.
Hey, we are winding down our time. Bill Bender from Sporting News. And as we step back and we just think about the college football playoff, I mean, do you think over time that this playoff will become the cultural juggernaut like March Madness is with that tournament?
I hope so. Well, in order for that to happen, we need the first round to be compelling. You know, I'm an Ohio University grad, so I always tell people, any chance I can tell them, I was like, hey, you know, the school in March Madness that has the most wins is a 13 seed or lower, and it's Ohio University, and I'm so proud to tell people that we need upsets in the first round. The first round games all have a spread of 7 points or more, so that tells you that these might not be competitive games. We need that touch of magic. We need SMU to go to Penn State and play well. We need that Arizona State or Boise State run, and if that happens, then you'll have some of that magic that March gives us. It is a different kind. I'm wondering if it can compete with the NFL playoffs. I think it can, and I'm excited to see these first-round games on campus.
Hey, we talked about the college football playoff. I can't let you get away without giving us a hit on Bill Belichick as he agrees to a 5-year deal to be UNC's head coach. What was your reaction?
Stunned in some ways. You know, I thought he would go back to the NFL. I think it's great for the college game. I love it when Deion comes and coaches college football. Or, you know, I made the comparison to Bill Walsh in the 90s when he went to Stanford after he won the Super Bowls with the 49ers. I think it could play out like that. And when you see the tweets that, hey, he can't relate to 17 and 18-year-olds, you know who likes Bill Belichick? High school coaches do. I was at a coach's clinic a few years ago. Bill Belichick was speaking at a clinic here in Columbus, and every high school coach was taking notes like foot on the floor, like it was the greatest thing in the world. So, yeah, he'll do fine. It's just a question of how long he coaches there. I guess that's the only one I had.
Why do you think the NFL was not willing to have him back? Because it seems like they decided, you know, teams, they were just going to go a different direction. What was it about Bill Belichick that they punted on?
I think some of it may be the last few years without Brady, and you kind of saw what New England was. But I that one I don't understand, because I thought that he would surely go back to the NFL and take a team and chase Don Shula's record. So I guess that's the most surprising part to me, that you have a 72-year-old coach who maybe he could have got back into the NFL for a couple years, and instead he chose Chapel Hill in a league, by the way, where there's a lot of parity. So to think that North Carolina can't be in the mix right away, I mean, Bill O'Brien was the type of coach that could do well in both leagues. And, you know, Boston College was 7-5 with a bowl appearance this year and looked pretty good in spots. So I think I'm excited to see week one. I believe that fittingly they play TCU. That'll be fun to see.
Big Bill in Chapel Hill, UNC. I mean, can he turn North Carolina into a winner? I mean, do you think he'll have success right away? What's your timeline, Bill?
Well, I mean, you go back to that Bill Walsh's first season at Stanford, and I went back and looked, and they were 10-3. They beat 5 ranked teams. They beat Notre Dame. I remember watching that one, and he was the offensive master, and that's kind of Belichick on the other side of the ball. So I think they could have a good year right away. Does that mean playoff? I mean, SMU won the conference in year one, so it feasibly could happen. I mean, obviously the portal and the roster will factor into that, but there's going to be a lot of attention on him. I always, you know, if you're going to the press conference looking for something, I've been to a couple Patriots games. You're not going to get much. So I remember the first time I asked Bill Belichick a question, I was just hoping he wouldn't make me feel really bad, but he didn't. So you know, that you trial and error with that, but I do think it'll be good for the game.
You know, college football, it has such a different feel to it, like it's almost becoming too professional. We know the landscape has totally changed with the transfer portal and NIL. Should we just accept now that college football is a professional sport?
It is. It has crossed that line a little bit. I think contracts would be next. I mean, the portal, the way to lower the numbers in the portal would be have college athletes sign 2-year contracts. I mean, that's part of the deal. We're going to pay them. They've needed to be compensated for what they're doing. This is the best way to do it. It's a fluid situation. It's different. It's a little clunkier than the NFL, obviously, because the NFL is a professional organization. But I think the product on the field is still compelling, and it was very compelling this year with the way that we did it. So, you know, there's so many things that I got wrong this season in a good way. I didn't know Indiana would go 11-1. Didn't know Travis Hunter and Colorado would go 9-3, or that Florida State would have the season they had. So I do think it'll be easier to build programs at the cost of you're going to have to re-recruit the kids every year.
He's the senior writer at Sporting News. Check him out, Bill Bender. Give him a follow on Twitter or X at BillBender92 and all of his articles at sportingnews.com. Enjoy all the games. We look forward to another conversation real soon. Thank you, Bill.
Hey, thank you.
You bet. Stick around. There's more coming your way on the Big East Sports Show.